I think there is a kind of, among certain people, certainly a victorious feeling that this operation succeeded. Important to remember who Hassan Nasrallah was, and his 30-year trail of terror, not just even in the Middle East, but all the way into Europe and Latin America. So that has kind of restored some Israeli swagger. But I don't think anyone is feeling more secure.
Well, let's talk to the Israeli-Palestinian reporter, Noga Tarnopolsky, who is in Jerusalem. Noga, hello again.
Hi, Henry.
Hi. What's the feeling like where you are at the moment? Are people feeling more secure now that, to quote Mr. Netanyahu, the score has been settled? Or are they more fearful about what Nasrallah's killing may lead to?
I don't think that Israelis are feeling more secure at all. I think there is a kind of, among certain people, certainly a victorious feeling that this operation succeeded. Important to remember who Hassan Nasrallah was, and his 30-year trail of terror, not just even in the Middle East, but all the way into Europe and Latin America. So that has kind of restored some Israeli swagger. But I don't think anyone is feeling more secure. And I don't have the sense, in the less than 24 hours we've had, that Netanyahu's poll figures are going to be changing significantly, if that's what we're talking about. Israelis are not feeling confidence in his management of this war.
Despite his bombast on the world stage at the UN last Thursday, because he was presenting himself as Benjamin Netanyahu, who will speak truth to what he called a cesspit of anti-Semitism at the UN General Assembly, and very clearly saying, I'm the guy who's going to defend Israel on the international stage, even if we're on our own. Hasn't that reassured people at all?
It's not my sense that it's reassured anybody. I think that was a message, especially to his base. He's trying very hard to keep his base in Israel on side, and not have them go into even more extremists, the support of his even more extremist ministers who come from different political parties. It's worth mentioning. My sense from that speech is that he used some hard truths from the past year to try and project himself to Israelis as really their only defender. Remember, I'm the guy who knows how to address the international community. I'm the guy who speaks impeccable English. I'm the guy. But I don't see a major change. Again, it's been a very short amount of time. But Netanyahu inside Israel has lost his luster. And I would say that in the international stage, to Israel's great detriment, the fact, for example, that in the last week, he appears to have misled the White House about his acceptance of their efforts to negotiate a ceasefire with Hezbollah. I think this is putting Israel in great diplomatic isolation, and that it's dangerous. I don't think I'm the only one here who sees it that way. You can see it in every headline in the Israeli newspapers.
Mm-hmm. And how worried are Israelis about a further call-up of reservists to perhaps engage in an incursion into southern Lebanon in order to create a buffer zone and allow some 60,000 Israelis to go back to their homes?
Right. It's a bit more than 100,000 Israelis who are internally displaced from the north. And that exact point, which you just mentioned, is what's putting a lot of political pressure on Netanyahu, because he's failed to find a way for them to safely return home in a full year. I think I forgot your question, Henry.
No,
No,
I can imagine you must be, and I imagine things are tense.
Could you repeat your question?
I'm wondering whether Israelis whose sons, daughters, aunties, uncles, etc., are going to be drafted if there is an incursion across the border into southern Lebanon. We remember what happened last time.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And it's worth remembering that the Second Lebanon War in 2006 actually began with Hezbollah capturing 2 Israeli soldiers and holding their bodies hostage. So there's a long history here. You're right. Israelis are responding with desperation and exhaustion to this new call-up. The rumors we're hearing here, and I've seen reflected in the media, is the possibility of a limited ground incursion into Lebanon, as you've just mentioned, to create a buffer zone. It's important to mention that this is a buffer zone which should have existed for decades now and been imposed by the United Nations and the international community as part of Resolution 1701, which obliged Hezbollah to stay behind the line of the Litani River. And that was voted in the UN, but then never enforced. And as a result, Hezbollah, and as we saw yesterday as well, even Iranian generals are directing a military campaign against Israel from the Israeli border itself.
Yeah, and when it comes to what Iran might do next, how worried are Israelis that Iran, after all the bluster over the past few months, might feel forced to do something now that their chief client in Lebanon has been killed?
I would say that that's a very major worry, Henry, because again, both Hamas and Hezbollah are, what are called the peripheral arms of the Iranian armed forces. Hezbollah, probably the most important of them all. And this is a major blow to Hezbollah. So it's not just Iran's bluster, it's just the kind of reality that Iran, which has been pretty successfully trying to establish itself as a major regional power in recent years, will feel the need to show that it has the capacity to respond. And so Israelis are, I would say, kind of crouched in fearful anticipation of that. There were air raid sirens all day yesterday. Rockets were launched from Iraq, from Yemen, and from Lebanon, and of course from Gaza at Israel. And there is great fear of some sort of Iranian response. There's also fears that go beyond the borders. We're right before the Jewish New Year, and Israelis are being told to be very careful if they travel abroad because there's an expectation of Iranian attacks against Jewish or Israeli targets abroad.
Noga, thank you very much indeed for bringing us the latest from Jerusalem. That's the Israeli-Palestinian reporter, Noga Tarnopolsky. It's Henry Bonsu on Times Radio. In for Alexis Conran this Sunday afternoon, fast approaching 1:15. Well, with Israel's dismantling of the Hezbollah leadership and the ongoing airstrikes across Lebanon, well, perhaps the biggest question, as we were just hearing in the conflict, is how Iran will act. And the country seemingly is facing a major choice. Push Hezbollah to retaliate against Israel and in doing so, push the region closer to an all-out conflict, or indeed pursue a ceasefire to avoid further escalations, or do something themselves. Well, let's talk to Sanam Vakil, who's director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House. Sanam, you heard a description there of how Israelis in Jerusalem are feeling. What do you think the mood will be in Tehran and beyond today?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. I think Iranians are very nervous. They were very surprised by the killing of Hassan Nasrallah and are worried, of course, that Israel is going to shift course after finishing its campaign in Lebanon and turn its gaze to Iran. And I think this is, of course, heavy on the minds of the Iranian political establishment and Iran's supreme leader, who himself has been moved to a secure location for fear of another assassination attempt.
What do you think they're most likely to do? People were predicting all kinds of dire events after the assassination of Haniyeh, the Hamas political leader, but nothing materially happened. They are in a box right now, aren't they? They're in a bind. If they don't do something, then their luster and some of their mystique will disappear.
Yes, you're quite right. And Iran, after the killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, promised to respond quite fiercely. But since the confirmation of Nasrallah's death, actually, statements from Iran have been rather muted, promising revenge, but not suggesting that it's going to be imminent. And that is because Iran perhaps has been checkmated. The axis of resistance has certainly been degraded and weakened. Israel has been quite effective in breaking apart the different arms of the axis of resistance. And Iran knows that Israel would like nothing more than for Iran to pile in, because that would give Israel a great justification for responding and hitting Iran directly. Iran also has domestic dynamics and concerns that it has to balance. It has a more moderate president who's just been in New York at the UN, trying to put out feelers for broader negotiations with the West over Iran's nuclear program. The economic situation inside Iran is quite dire after many years of international sanctions on the Iranian economy. So there are a lot of key constraints on Iran's ability to push forward with a quick response. I don't think that we'll see anything imminent, but Iran will try to do what Iran always tries to do, open the door to dialogue, while, of course, behind the scenes, fueling and reforming Hezbollah and the axis of resistance.
Well, indeed, but they will know the capacity of the Israeli intelligence operations. We've seen it over the past couple of weeks in Lebanon. How concerned will the Iranians be that when Benjamin Netanyahu says the long arm of Israel can reach you anywhere in your country, they really mean it? And if they do plan a counterattack or some kind of retaliation, the Israelis will be aware of it.
Well, the Iranians are quite aware that Israel has also breached Iranian intelligence. Ismail Haniyeh was killed in Tehran under the supervision and protection of Iranian intelligence and security. So it's abundantly clear that they have holes in their intelligence that they need to fill. And for a number of years now, Israel has been pursuing intelligence campaigns inside Iran, attacking Iranian nuclear facilities, sabotage, killing Iranian scientists. So they're well aware of their limitations. What Iran is quite skilled at doing is practicing strategic patience and also turning crises into opportunities. This is sort of a pattern that we've seen over a number of decades now. I can't say when, where, and how they might try to recalibrate, but I think incrementally over time, they will try to rebuild back. I think what we do have to take away from the past 12 months since October 7th, though, is that Iran has been abundantly clear that it is prioritizing Iranian national interests above that of the axis of resistance. It continues to seek de-escalation and no broader regional engagement. So I would be surprised if it changes that strategy right now.
Mm-hmm. Iran has a new, more moderate president after the death of the previous, more hardline president in a helicopter crash earlier this year. Who's going to take the decisions, both the immediate tactical ones and the longer-term ones? The supreme leader is elderly and he's in hiding. So who is going to be calling the shots?
Well, he's not in hiding. He's in a safe location.
Okay, safe location, sorry.
To be clear, but Iranian foreign policy decisions are made in a consensus basis in the Supreme National Security Council, where members of Pezeshkian's government sit alongside security and intelligence, and they come to an agreement on ways forward. Thus far, I don't think that there is a consensus on what to do. Over the past few months, the new president has prevailed and called for caution and pragmatism and non-response, because he doesn't want a rash response that is provocative to drag Iran into a military conflict. This new president is trying to prioritize engagement, diplomacy, and sanctions relief. And the two, military escalation and sanctions relief and diplomacy don't quite go hand in hand.
Indeed. Sanam, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio. That's Sanam Vakil, who's the director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House.